There's a number from Spain's World Cup build-up that should worry every team in their group. Now picture adding its most explosive 18-year-old footballer in the world back into that machine. Everyone keeps asking the same question. Is Lamine Yamal ready for the World Cup? It's a fair question. The World Cup destroys players. Veterans crack under the pressure. Ballon d'Or winners disappear for entire tournaments. Some of the greatest footballers in history have spent their entire careers chasing one magical World Cup run and never found it. And now Spain are supposed to trust an 18-year-old? An 18-year-old who still can't legally drive in some countries? An 18-year-old who will arrive carrying the expectations of an entire nation? An 18-year-old expected to decide matches against the best defenders on earth? On the surface, it sounds ridiculous, but that question hides something far more interesting. Because while everyone is asking whether Yamal is ready for Spain, nobody seems to be asking whether Spain have become ready for Yamal. And once you understand what Spain have quietly built over the last 2 years, the entire conversation changes. Because this isn't the story of a teenager carrying a national team. It's the story of a national team redesigning itself around a teenager. And that's terrifying. The easiest way to understand modern football is this. Talent alone doesn't win tournaments. Systems do. Look at every great international team. The best teams don't simply collect stars. They create environments where stars become unstoppable. Argentina didn't win because Messi suddenly became faster. They won because every player around him understood exactly what their job was. Some players carried the ball. Some players pressed. Some players covered space. Some players sacrificed themselves completely. The system protected the genius, and Spain have started doing something remarkably similar. Except there's one difference. They're doing it for an 18-year-old. When most fans watch Yamal, they focus on the obvious things. The dribbling, the pace, the left foot, the moments where defenders look completely helpless. But football isn't decided by highlights. Football is decided by everything that happens before the highlight. Watch Spain carefully. Watch what happens before Yamal even touches the ball. The striker pins the center backs. The midfield rotates. The fullback provides support underneath him. The opposite winger stretches the defensive line. Players begin moving before the ball arrives. It's almost like they're preparing a stage. And then Yamal steps onto it. That isn't coincidence. That is structure. That is planning. That is coaching. And it explains why he looks so dangerous every time he receives possession. The hardest thing in football isn't beating defenders. The hardest thing is receiving the ball in a position where beating defenders is possible. Most young wingers never get that luxury. They're isolated, forced backwards, asked to create magic from impossible situations. Spain don't do that. Spain create favorable situations before Yamal ever gets involved. Think about how defenders experience it. You can't simply rush toward him. If you commit too aggressively, Spain find the free midfielder. If you stay off him, he drives forward. If you send a second defender, space opens somewhere else. Every defensive solution creates a new problem, and that's exactly what Spain want. Because Yamal isn't just dangerous when he dribbles. He's dangerous because he forces decisions. Elite football is really a game about forcing mistakes. The best players don't beat defenders physically. They overwhelm them mentally. They force defenders to choose, and then punish whichever choice gets made. That's where Yamal becomes special. At 18 years old, he already understands this. Watch his body language. Notice how often he waits, how often he pauses, how often he tempts defenders into moving first. Young players normally play at one speed. Fast. Everything is fast. Every touch, every dribble, every run. Yamal doesn't. Sometimes he slows the entire game down, then suddenly accelerates. And that change of rhythm is devastating because defenders can prepare for speed. What they struggle to prepare for is unpredictability. This is why Spain trusts him. Not because he's young, not because he's exciting, not because he creates clips for social media, because he solves problems. The biggest challenge in tournament football is breaking organized defensive structures. Every team becomes compact. Every team becomes cautious. Every team becomes harder to break down. You need players capable of creating something from nothing. Very few players can do that consistently. Yamal can, and Spain know it, which is why something unusual has happened. Instead of treating him like a prospect, instead of slowly introducing him, instead of limiting responsibility, they've accelerated everything. They've essentially looked at one of the most talented young players football has produced in years and decided not to wait. The future arrived early, and now the rest of the world has to deal with it. But here's the part that should concern Spain's opponents the most. Lamine Yamal is improving rapidly. Every month he looks more comfortable. Every month his decision-making improves. Every month he understands more about how elite football works. And that's a frightening thought, because most players don't receive this level of trust until their mid-20s. Yamal is receiving it before turning 20. He's gaining experience years before his rivals. He's learning tournament football years before most players even enter their prime. And Spain are benefiting from every second of it, which brings us back to the original question. Is Lamine Yamal ready for the World Cup? Maybe, maybe not. Nobody can truly know until the tournament begins. Football has a way of surprising everyone. But there is another question, a more important question, a more dangerous question. What happens if he is? What happens if an already dominant Spanish system gets peak level performances from the most explosive young attacker in world football? What happens when all those carefully rehearsed movements, all those rotations, all that structure, all that preparation finally collide with elite individual talent on football's biggest stage? Because if that happens, Spain won't just have a talented youngster. They'll have something much more dangerous, a complete system designed to maximize him. And history has shown us that when great teams successfully build around great players, the rest of the world usually suffers. Which is why Spain's opponents shouldn't be worried about whether Lamine Yamal can handle the World Cup. They should be worried about something else. Spain have already made their decision. They aren't protecting Yamal from the World Cup. They're building a World Cup team around him, and that should scare everybody.